Good.
So that's 50, that's 250 for the 5 and 5, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Brilliant.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Individual.
For 14 years, Salvage Hunters was a British television powerhouse, turning forgotten relics into national treasures. But behind the scenes, the empire was quietly fracturing. One by one, the faces we trusted simply vanished. Drew Pritchard gone, Rebecca gone, even the legendary John T. walked away. There were no grand finales, just a series of sudden, unexplained exits that left millions of fans in the dark. But now, the silence has finally been broken. From high-stakes financial gambles and messy divorces to the ugly realities that the History Channel cameras were never allowed to film, we are revealing the true fate of the cast. Where did they go? And why did the team really fall apart? Drew Pritchard, the man who built it all.
Hello, mate. Welcome, welcome. You okay? Not bad. Come on in. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much. So what have you got for us today, Rob?
Drew Pritchard didn't just host Salvage Hunters. He was Salvage Hunters. He gave the show the nitty-gritty that made it popular. That is not a romantic exaggeration. It is simply the structural truth of what the program was. A format built entirely around one man's expertise, one man's personality. Something you couldn't take away from him, even if you tried to do so. He was the life of the show. Remove Drew Pritchard from that equation, and you do not have a show. You have a van driving around the British countryside. He appeared in over 240 episodes between 2011 and 2025, recording a whopping 20 seasons over those 14 years. And then, on April 2025, he sat down in an armchair inside his half-finished Georgian townhouse in Bath and told his audience he was done. It was a hard pill to swallow, yet nothing would change his decision. No formal arrangements were made for an elaborate farewell. Just Drew, a chair, a camera, and the honest acknowledgement that 20 seasons was enough. He said it had been an incredible privilege. He said he had always wanted to give viewers an honest representation of the antiques trade. He believed he had done that. He thanked the production team at Curve Media for 15 to 16 years of what he called a very special and rare thing in television. And he said the show was now in very safe hands. The news was a shock. Nevertheless, he finished and returned to the house. That house is the other story running alongside the television exit. The Bath Georgian townhouse, grade I listed, 5 stories, purchased in 2022 for £1.5 million, in the condition Drew himself described as the worst house in the best location. This wasn't a preoccupied thought, but after restoring it for 4 years using only reclaimed, salvaged, antique, and ethically sourced materials, one wouldn't blame his analysis. The project ran into serious financial difficulties that he documented publicly in a 2025 spin-off series about the restoration. His £200,000 initial budget was exhausted within 10 months. This wasn't the plan, but it became his worst nightmare unexpectedly. When he couldn't continue, he told his master builder his wallet was empty. The solution was the auction. Drew Wheats in Berkshire, 600 lots across 2 days. 30 years worth of personal collections are going under the hammer, including some of his most prized pieces. The auction raised over £800,000, enough to push the project forward into what he described as its final phase. As of 2026, the Bath House is in its 4th year of restoration, closer to finishing than it has ever been. Drew describes other derelict properties catching his eye. Whether he sells the Bath House, rents it, or lives in it himself, remains publicly unresolved. He would have to find a way around it. His Tetbury shop, Drew Pritchard Antiques, opened on November 2025 on Long Street in the Gloucestershire Antiques capital, a new physical base that reflected his personality deeply. And in one of his interviews, he said he was fortunate to be amongst Britain's most respected dealers. His online business continues through his website. His social media following sits at approximately 185,000 on Instagram as of April 2026. His net worth is estimated at between $8 and $10 million. Drew had built a niche all by himself, and nothing was going to stop him. Built across 14 years of television, decades of antiques dealing, and the accumulated value of properties restored and sold. Drew at some point hinted that he was taking a bow from the TV space, not necessarily away from trade, but from the cameras. He intends to continue his delightful quest to work on classic cars, antiquing, and finishing the house. That is a Drew Pritchard exit, quiet by his standards, rooted in the physical work he has always found most meaningful, and entirely on his own terms. But here is what the viewer at home watching the show felt when that 20th season aired without Drew for the first time. Something was missing. Not just a presenter, something more specific than that. The particular quality of watching a person who genuinely knows something share that knowledge without any performance attached to it. Drew never explained himself to the camera in a way that suggested he was aware of it as an audience. He simply did the work, and the camera happened to be there. He made his exit more like an undercover, and in this 21st century, it is vanishingly rare in television. This was a bone of contention for the production team, and knowing that replacing the legacy left behind was impossible posed a greater challenge. Nevertheless, they made a different decision. 2 new dealers. Different expertise, different price points, a different kind of show that carries the same format forward without attempting to replicate what made the original work. Whether the decision holds a major stake in the show or not, the numbers have since been shown in the Salvage Hunters report card. The full picture of what the Salvage Hunters cast looks like in 2026 doesn't end with Drew, and his departure isn't the most unexplained. The man who was steady on the wheels had a different story entirely. John T., the friend who disappeared.
Lanning, and he owns the Lambretta Museum. He is starting to sell off the collection, basically buying it from a museum.
John T. was never the star of Salvage Hunters. He was something more useful than that. He was the human element, the person who made Drew Pritchard look like a person rather than a television personality. The straight man to Drew's expertise, the dry wit in the passenger seat, the one friend who knew how to drive his audience and steal the show the moment he found himself in one. And then, he suddenly disappeared. Without a hint, no explanation. Not even a single trace left everyone in suspense. That silence is the most interesting thing about John T.'s departure, and it is entirely in character. His friendship with Drew, one would say, was divinely orchestrated, and even though the time when they met isn't revealed, they connected so easily as if they had known each other since childhood. By the time Salvage Hunters found Drew, T had already been part of his world for decades. He had worked with him on and off before the cameras arrived, delivering, picking up, doing the physical side of a trade that generates a lot of heavy, awkward, difficult-to-move objects that do not transport themselves. He appeared in Season 3 in 2013 and Season 4 in 2014. Brief appearances, a cameo each time, testing the chemistry on screen. Seeing how the audience responded to the dynamic between the two men, the response was immediate and clear. People watching could feel that the friendship was real, that the banter was not scripted. That was when Drew said something T found funny, and T actually laughed. When T said something that landed, Drew's reaction was genuine. The production gave him a formal role in Season 8 in 2016. 81 episodes in total across the show's run. Driver and deliverer in the credits. Best friend in practice. His role on the road was straightforward in description and irreplaceable in execution. He drove the van. He helped load whatever Drew bought. He provided company across the 5-hour drives between one end of Britain and the other. He kept the atmosphere on the road honest, in the way that only someone who has known you long enough to call you on your nonsense actually can. One would say T complimented Drew, and it was nothing far from the truth. Drew's wife once publicly confirmed that the duo had something strong, so much so that if her husband needed cheering up, T was the right person for the job. Every episode he participated in had a unique flow, and he surely contributed immensely. The audience built a specific loyalty to him, not the loyalty they built to Drew, rooted in expertise, authority, and the particular quality of watching someone who genuinely knows what they are doing. The loyalty to T was warmer and more personal. He had a unique role in the van, and in every scene, he was fun to watch. He gave the show an outlook that wouldn't have become possible if he weren't on the scene. So what happened? The honest answer is that T did not issue a statement about what happened behind the scenes. At least, not any that we know. But what is known from formal records is that in July 2023, the production team publicly thanked T for more than a decade of memorable episodes. The farewell message was respectful and appreciative, confirming that his time on the show had come to an end. The tone of the announcement suggested an amicable departure rather than a conflict. There was no official statement indicating dismissal or dispute. He made one final return appearance in Season 14 in 2020, a single episode. He and Drew visited a Railwayana stockist in Gloucestershire and purchased a vintage card table together. It was, for the audience who had been waiting for him, a brief and bittersweet window back into the dynamic they had been missing. After that, nothing. As of the same 2023, John T. removed himself from social media entirely. No Instagram, no Facebook, no public presence of any kind. His current whereabouts, occupation, and circumstances are genuinely unknown beyond what can be reasonably inferred from a person who worked in the antiques and delivery trade for most of his adult professional life. There is a thyroid condition in the background of his story. Viewers noticed significant weight fluctuation throughout his years on the show. He addressed it not through public statements, but through the visible evidence of changes in diet and exercise that appeared on screen across seasons. He managed it with the same uncomplicated directness he brought to everything else about himself. No drama, no performance of struggle. Just a person dealing with something and getting on with the day. The online rumor landscape around John T.'s departure contains the usual range of unverified claims, arguments with Drew, affairs, and health crises. None of these is supported by credible sourcing. None have been confirmed by anyone with knowledge of the actual circumstances. What remains is the absence itself, the specific gap in the show that his departure created, and the question that a section of the Salvage Hunters audience has never stopped asking. Will T ever return to the show? Only time will tell. T's departure from the show, though complicated, seems to be the quietest and most complete. No drama, no explanations, just a quiet exit. Rebecca Pritchard, the expert who stayed longer than anyone expected.
Underground station, in the ticket office.
Beautiful, phenomenal. It's a cast phosphor bronze.
Rebecca Pritchard had every reason to walk away from Salvage Hunters in 2017. The marriage had ended. The affair had become national news. The court case had put details into the public record that no amount of careful media management could scrub clean. The tabloids had run with it. The damage was done. She wasn't feeling anything about it any longer. Most people in her position would have done worse, moved on, and continued with life as if nothing had happened. But guess what? Rebecca went back to work, something most women wouldn't dare try. She appeared in 46 episodes of the main Salvage Hunters series across its full run from 2011 to 2024. She fronted 27 episodes of Salvage Hunters, The Restorers, from 2018 to 2024 as its lead presenter. That is 73 episodes after the divorce. 7 years of professional commitment to a television franchise whose personal foundations had publicly collapsed. She was operating on a different energy, and everyone saw it. Born in February 1958, Rebecca came to the antiques world through a long career in women's fashion. 20 years of wholesale, retail, and manufacturing between the United Kingdom and Hong Kong. She understood commercial structures, supply chains, and the practical mechanics of moving products from one stage of a process to the next. She brought that commercial intelligence into the antiques trade when she met Drew in the early 2000s, and it became her trademark throughout the show. It became the foundation of everything she contributed to the show. Her role was not decorative. She was the research expert, the valuation specialist, the person who could tell Drew what something was actually worth to the right buyer at the right moment. While Drew operated on instinct and accumulated knowledge, Rebecca brought the discipline of someone whose commercial background had trained her to assess value with precision rather than enthusiasm. The show needed both, and the audience understood that even when the credit billing didn't fully reflect it. Then 2017 arrived. Drew had been involved in an affair with a woman named Amanda Thomas for approximately 2.5 years. The circumstances of its becoming public were painful and complicated. The husband of the woman involved confronted Drew at a pub in Conwy. The case went to court. The details landed in the tabloids. Amanda Thomas's solicitor mentioned messages from other women during proceedings that added further layers to an already difficult situation. Rebecca said nothing publicly. She covered it up as if nothing had happened and went on with her day-to-day living. Not at the time, not in the years that followed. She absorbed the coverage, protected her children, and returned to the cameras. She probably was not of this world. Her company directorships tell their own quiet story. She was appointed director of Drew Pritchard Limited in July 2006. She was reappointed in September 2014 after a previous resignation. Her final resignation from that role and from 2 other associated directorships came in October 2016, before the public scandal, before the Liverpool Arms confrontation, before any of it became tabloid material. She had already been managing the separation of her professional and personal life from the business structures for over a year before the outside world found out there was anything to separate. She had the foresight to handle weightier matters, and when this happened, she maintained a respectful lane. The restorers gave her a specific and meaningful professional platform during those post-divorce years. Her show, her authority, her name in the presenter credit, rather than the supporting role. She ran it across 6 seasons, with the same quiet competence she had always brought to everything. 27 episodes of a program that worked because she had the genuine expertise to carry it on her own terms. And then, on September 2024, she stepped away. No announcement, no farewell interview, no statement from the production company. She simply stopped appearing. The Restorers had concluded its run. The main series continued without her, and Rebecca Pritchard returned to the private professional world she had always maintained alongside the television work. Her time on the show was worth everything, and even if anyone tried denying it, the memories speak louder than anything. Her current life at 2026 is the life of a practitioner rather than a personality. She operates through United Agents as a restoration and valuation expert, sourcing decorative antiques for private clients and interior designers through a network built across decades of professional immersion. She continues property development work in North Wales. Her net worth sits at approximately £2.5 million, built through television, antiques, and property, across a career that existed long before any camera crew showed up and continues long after they have moved on. Her children, Tom and Grace, are adults. She has kept them entirely out of public discussion. Her relationship status remains private and unconfirmed in any credible source. The online speculation about her departure continues to circulate across various platforms. Unverified claims about conflicts, inappropriate relationships, and dramatic behind-the-scenes fallouts fill the vacuum that her silence creates. None of it is supported by evidence. All of it should be treated as exactly what it is. She left not due to a firing or dramatic on-screen fallout, but rather chose to move on to different projects. Her course on the show came to an end amicably, and she quietly called it quits. 3 original cast members were gone. Each departure is different. Each person was moving into something quieter and more private than the cameras had ever allowed. But the show didn't end, it evolved. And what it evolved into is a story about 2 people nobody had heard of 18 months ago. Viki, Knott, and Alister Dryburgh, the new chapter.
Great. Good.
So that's 50, that's 250 for the 5 and 5, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Brilliant.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Thank
When Drew Pritchard left Salvage Hunters, he told his audience something specific. He told them to trust the people who would come after him. He told them it would be worth it. He gave a clue to what was coming. That is not the kind of thing Drew says lightly. He is not a man who offers reassurance for its own sake. He does not perform the confidence he does not feel. When he said the show was in safe hands, he meant it. And the reason he could mean it is because the 2 people who stepped into that space were not strangers to the trade or to him. Viki, Knott, and Alister Dryburgh. 2 dealers, different backgrounds, different buying styles, different price points. Brought in together because the production could not choose between them, and eventually concluded it did not have to. Let's run through Alister because his story holds a prominent place in the show. Alister Dryburgh was born and raised in Capel Bangor, a small village near Aberystwyth in Ceredigion, West Wales. He is 50 years old at 2026. He spent years working as a rural postman, delivering mail across the Ceredigion countryside while dealing antiques on the side, the way some people do crosswords, for the satisfaction of it, for the money it occasionally generated, as a parallel pursuit that was always more passion than profession. 20 years ago, he made the leap. He gave up the postal round and committed to dealing full-time. He started with fairs, built his network of contacts across West Wales and beyond. Eventually opened his shop, Exchange Stores, in Capel Bangor, open on Fridays and Saturdays, stocked with finds from the villages on his doorstep. He built a second social media identity under the handle West Wales Antiques on Instagram, documenting his finds in a specific way that attracts people who genuinely care about objects, rather than people who care about content. It was the pandemic that changed his visibility. With the physical market closed, Alister moved his selling online. He began hosting Sunday sales from his own garden through Facebook and Instagram, live. Unscripted, just a dealer and his stock and the people watching at home who wanted what he had. The Salvage Hunters production team was watching. By the time the call came, he had known Drew Pritchard for approximately 20 years, not as a television friendship, as a real one. He described how, in the early days of their acquaintance, before mobile phones were ubiquitous, if he had something for sale, he would take a photograph, have the film processed, and post the print to Drew in the hope he might be interested. That was how they communicated. That was the depth of the connection. He said introducing Drew to WhatsApp was a revelation. The mock interview that led to his casting also led to Viki Knott's casting. The production team could not separate them. Both dealers brought something distinct. Both had genuine credentials. The solution was to use them on alternate weeks, which created something unexpected and genuinely useful for the show's longevity. A 3-tier buying structure. Alister described it plainly in an interview. Viki buys at the lower end. He sits in the middle. Drew was buying at the higher end. That range means something for an audience with varied budgets and varied tastes. Not everyone watching Salvage Hunters is interested in the 1,000-pound architectural piece. Some of them are looking at 300-pound items, wondering whether there is an equivalent in their area. The new format serves more of them simultaneously. Viki Knott brought unique expertise and her own relationship with her audience to the format. 11 episodes across the 2024 to 2025 run alongside Alister's 9. Her buying instincts and her on-screen presence have been received positively by the show's established audience, though it takes time for any new addition to a long-running format to build the specific kind of trust that Drew and John T. generated across years of consistent presence. But she came in and, in a moment, adapted as if she were playing a script. Alister spoke about the filming process with the directness of someone who had not been trained to manage media expectations. She was new to the game, even though she portrayed a tough resilience. "The cameras are always rolling," he said. "There are no cuts. There are no moments where the director asks him to stop and do it again. What you see is what happened." The purchases are made with real money from real pockets. The production pays wages. It does not fund the buying. If he purchases something that does not sell, he absorbs the loss personally. Drew's formula. Unchanged. He also spoke about the scale of the show's global reach in a way that surprised even him. A crew trip to Italy to film revealed just how large the Salvage Hunters audience is across Europe. He described the reception Drew received on the streets there as comparable to that of a celebrity. People who had been watching the show for years in a different country, in a different language, were responding to the same authenticity that built the British audience in the first place. Drew publicly and specifically endorsed the new dynamic. He said to give them a chance, just as the audience had given him one at the beginning. He said to trust him, the friend who disappeared, the expert who stayed too long and then left with grace. The man who built it all walked away into his half-finished Georgian house. And 2 new people brought a different, unusual ball game. The show itself, what Salvage Hunters is now.
It's just the most incredible setting. It's like a grand architectural, salvage, art gallery, antique.
20 seasons, 2011 to 2025, and then a new era that nobody quite knows how to describe yet. That uncertainty is not a criticism. It is simply the honest reality of what happens when a long-running television format loses the person who defined it and then tries to answer the question of what it was always really about. Was Salvage Hunters a show about Drew Pritchard? Or was it a show about a way of seeing the world that Drew happened to embody most completely? The answer to that question determines whether the post-Drew version of the show can work on its own terms. And the evidence from the 2024 to 2025 transition season suggests the production made the right bet. The format remains exactly what it always was. The production team was 10 steps ahead in their game, 2 dealers traveling Britain in a van, hunting through estates, factories, mills, country houses, salvage yards, and private collections for pieces with hidden value, buying with real money from real pockets. No safety net from the production budget, no guarantee of profit. The same genuine commercial risk that Drew insisted on from the very first episode, because he understood that risk was the thing that made every transaction feel real to the audience watching. That fundamental honesty is the show's greatest asset, and it is not Drew's property, it is the format. Alister Dryburgh made this point explicitly in an interview conducted after he joined. He described taking something home on a Friday and selling it within a week. Personal money, personal risk. Personal satisfaction when the numbers work, and personal loss when they do not. He said Drew was adamant about keeping it that way, that it is as real as it gets, and that the long run of the show, across seasons where dozens of other similar programs came and went, is proof that the audience can feel the difference. The global reach of Salvage Hunters is a detail that most British viewers probably underestimate. 22 million viewers across 52 countries at its peak. The crew filming in Italy discovered an audience there whose enthusiasm for the show went well beyond casual familiarity. Alister described the reception Drew received on those streets as comparable to that of a visiting celebrity. People who had been watching the program in another language for years, responding to the specific quality of something that is unambiguously genuine. That reach does not disappear when a presenter changes. It transfers to the format itself, if the format maintains the qualities that built it. Authenticity, real money, real objects, real knowledge applied without performance. Those things are reproducible if the people replacing the original cast actually have them. Viki and Alister have them. That is why Drew endorsed them specifically, rather than simply wishing the show well in a generic farewell statement. The spin-offs tell their own story about what the Salvage Hunters universe actually contains beyond the main format. Salvage Hunters, The Restorers, ran for 6 seasons and 27 episodes. It gave Rebecca Pritchard her own platform, and gave the audience a window into the restoration process that the main show could only gesture toward. Salvage Hunters. Classic cars merged Drew's twin passions in a format that worked for both audiences simultaneously. Salvage Hunters. Georgian house restoration documented Drew's bath project as it was happening, turning a private financial crisis into compelling television. That capacity to generate adjacent content from the same core identity is a sign of a format with genuine depth. Most programs cannot sustain one spin-off. Salvage Hunters sustained several across its run because the world it documented had enough material to support exploration in multiple directions simultaneously. What comes next for the show is genuinely uncertain in the most interesting possible way. Drew mentioned a third new dealer whose identity had not yet been announced in his farewell statement. Someone whose addition to the format would bring a different perspective alongside Viki and Alister. The 3-tier buying structure that Alister described could become a 4-voice ecosystem if the production decides that an additional range serves the audience better than the clarity of a narrower focus. The question of whether Drew returns in any capacity is one the audience keeps raising and the production keeps failing to answer. He said himself he would continue antiquing. He said he would continue working on his classic cars. He said he would finish his house. He did not say he was entirely finished with cameras. A man who spent 14 years building a television identity around his genuine professional life is unlikely to find that the cameras lose interest in him simply because he chose to stop appearing on a scheduled program. A guest appearance, a one-off special, a project that merges the bathhouse story with the antiques world that gave it its budget. Any of these is possible without contradicting anything Drew said about his departure from the regular format. And John T's door has never been formally closed either. His return in season 14 showed that his relationship with the program remained warm enough for a single episode visit. Whether that translates into anything more substantial depends on conversations nobody outside the immediate circle is privy to. Honestly, the cast of Salvage Hunters in 2026 is a bit different from what it was in 2011. Drew is chilling in Bath, and Rebecca enjoys a smooth life in London. John T has since taken a bow from the public space, and 2 new dealers are driving through the British countryside in a van, spending their own money on things other people have forgotten. The show, as it turned out, was never really about the people in the van. It held a different significance altogether.
To a more curated business role. Then there is John T. His 2023 exit was public.
Salvage Hunters built something rare, a show about objects that was really about people, about what we value, what we discard, and what it says about us when someone else finds beauty in the things we walked away from. Drew laid the foundation, Rebecca supported it. John T brought in an unusual flair, and now 2 new dealers are pushing the course forward on British roads. Every one of them brought something special, You don't always find this on television. No wonder the audience never left for a minute. If this story brought back a favorite memory from the show, leave it in the comments below, and share this with someone who watched every episode alongside you.